Right now, some Tesla owners are quietly crossing 300,000 miles on original batteries and drive units, while others are facing $3,000 to $7,000 repair talks far earlier than expected. Same cars, same tech. The difference isn't luck. Teslas don't fail suddenly. They wear down silently. Today, I'm breaking down 5 daily habits that decide whether a Tesla lasts decades or drains your wallet. And number 4 alone has avoided 5-figure battery scares. Let's dive into number 1 first. This is the fastest way I see Teslas age quietly while owners swear nothing is wrong. Charging to 100% feels harmless because the car allows it, but high state of charge is where battery stress lives. When a lithium pack sits full, internal voltage stays elevated, chemical reactions accelerate, and long-term degradation creeps in without a warning light. In the shop, the pattern is consistent. The Teslas that cross 250,000 to 300,000 miles with stable range almost never live at full charge. Daily limits sit around 70 to 80%, and 100% is saved for road trips, then driven immediately. The cars that lose range early are usually the ones topped off every night and left sitting. The damage doesn't show up as a sudden failure. It shows up as slower charging, weaker peak power, and range loss that feels permanent by 120,000 to 150,000 miles. Heat makes it worse. A full battery parked in the sun is aging faster than the owner realizes. This isn't about babying the car. It's about reducing time spent at the most stressful part of the battery's operating window. You still get full performance when you need it. You just don't live there. If you want a simple rule that actually works, set your daily charge where the car recommends, usually around 80%. Only charge higher when a trip requires it, and drive soon after. Over years, that single habit slows degradation more than any software update ever will. And once charging habits are under control, how you charge becomes the next silent factor separating high-mile Teslas from the rest. Ignore this, and you'll likely pay earlier with range anxiety, resale loss, and battery conversations nobody wants to have once mileage climbs past expectations fast. Now that charging limits are clear, the next mistake happens where many owners choose to charge. And before to jump into that, please make sure to subscribe, as this will help us a lot. Supercharging is one of Tesla's greatest advantages, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. I see plenty of owners treat superchargers like their primary fuel source because it's fast and convenient. The problem is that convenience comes with heat, and heat is what quietly accelerates battery aging over time. Fast charging pushes large amounts of current into the pack very quickly. Tesla manages this well, but physics still applies. Higher current means higher internal temperatures, especially if the battery is already warm or at a higher state of charge. Do that occasionally on a road trip and it's a non-issue. Do it several times a week for years and the pack simply ages faster. In high-mileage Teslas that still feel healthy, supercharging is the exception, not the habit. Most of their charging happens at home on level 2, where current flows slowly and temperatures stay stable. These cars tend to maintain better range consistency past 200,000 miles, and charging speeds don't fall off as sharply with age. What often catches owners off guard is that the damage isn't obvious early on. The car still drives fine, the screen still looks normal, but by the time range loss becomes noticeable, the accelerated wear has already happened. That's when owners start asking why their charging curve looks worse than other Teslas with similar mileage. The fix isn't to avoid superchargers altogether. It's to be intentional. Use them when travel demands it, not because it's nearby. Don't sit at a supercharger pushing from 90 to 100% unless you absolutely need that range immediately. That final stretch adds disproportionate heat for very little gain. If you want your Tesla to age slowly, home charging should be your baseline. Supercharging should be your tool, not your routine. Once that balance is set, you remove one of the biggest long-term stressors on the battery without giving up the freedom Tesla was designed for. Even if you fix charging habits, battery damage still accelerates if temperature is ignored. And that brings us to the next issue. This is one of the most overlooked longevity habits in Tesla ownership, and it's where a lot of quiet damage happens without anyone realizing it. Owners understand warming up a gas engine, but many don't realize that cold lithium batteries are just as vulnerable, especially when asked to deliver or accept high power. When a Tesla battery is cold, internal resistance is higher. That means when you accelerate hard or plug into a fast charger immediately, the cells experience more stress and uneven current flow. Tesla's software tries to protect the pack, but it can only do so much if the driver keeps demanding power before the system is ready. In real-world use, I see this most often in colder climates and on short trips. The car sits overnight, the battery cools, and the driver jumps in and immediately asks for full torque or heads straight to a supercharger. The car still performs, but internally the pack is operating outside its ideal temperature window. Do that repeatedly over years and degradation accelerates. The Teslas that age well all follow the same pattern. They precondition before fast charging. They drive gently for the first few minutes in cold weather. They let the car bring the battery up to temperature before pushing it hard. It's not about driving slowly forever. It's about letting the system stabilize first. You don't see the benefit immediately. You don't get a warning if you skip it. But years later, the difference shows up in more consistent range, smoother power delivery, and charging behavior that still feels normal at high mileage. If you want a simple rule that works, don't ask for maximum performance or maximum charging speed from a cold battery. Let the car warm itself, then use it as intended. Once temperature is under control, the next silent killer to watch is how much mechanical wear you allow to build up underneath the car. So, battery care only solves half the problem. Next, we need to talk about what's wearing out underneath the car. This is where a lot of Tesla owners get caught off guard because the car feels smooth and quiet, even when things are starting to wear out underneath. Teslas are heavy vehicles with instant torque, and that combination is hard on suspension components and tires if maintenance is delayed or skipped. What I see repeatedly is owners focusing entirely on the battery and motors while ignoring alignment, tire rotation, and early suspension wear. Uneven tire wear is often the first sign. One shoulder wears faster, the car feels slightly vague on center, or steering starts to pull just enough to notice. None of this feels urgent, so it gets ignored. But uneven tire wear changes how load is transferred through the suspension. Ball joints, control arm bushings, and wheel bearings start carrying stress they weren't designed for. Over time, small alignment issues turn into loose components, noise, and instability that require much more than just tires to fix. High-mileage Teslas that stay tight and predictable all do the same basic things. Tires are rotated on schedule. Pressures are checked monthly, not when the warning pops up. Alignment is checked after pothole hits or curb contact, not after tires are destroyed. These owners don't drive slower, they just don't let small issues stack. I've seen Model 3s burn through a full set of tires in under 20,000 miles simply because alignment drifted and never got corrected. Fixing that early costs a few $100s. Letting it go leads to four-figure suspension repairs in a car that never quite feels right again. Once suspension wear creeps in, everything else starts working harder. And that leads straight into another system people assume no longer matters on an EV, but absolutely does. And while suspension wear is obvious eventually, there's another system aging quietly that almost no Tesla owner checks. This is one of the quietest ways Teslas rack up unnecessary repair bills, because regenerative braking convinces owners the brake system is basically immortal. Pads last longer, rotors stay cleaner, and everything feels fine. So the assumption becomes brakes don't need attention anymore. That's wrong. Brake pads wear less. Brake fluid still ages. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture from the air over time. That happens whether you drive 5,000 miles a year or 25,000. Moisture lowers the fluid's boiling point and encourages internal corrosion inside calipers, ABS valves, and brake lines. None of this shows up on the dash. There's no warning. The system feels normal right up until it doesn't. What I've seen in higher mileage Teslas that develop braking issues is rarely worn pads. Sticking calipers, uneven braking force, or corrosion-related failures that start small and spread. Once moisture has been sitting in the system for years, the damage isn't isolated. Replacing one component doesn't always solve it, because the contamination has already moved through the system. Owners are often shocked when a brake job on an EV turns into a four-figure conversation. "But I barely use the brakes," they say. That's exactly why the fluid gets ignored. The Teslas that avoid this problem treat brake fluid as a time-based service, not a wear-based one. Fluid gets tested or changed at regular intervals, even if the pads look brand new. It's boring maintenance, but it keeps the hydraulic system clean and predictable. There's also a safety angle people overlook. Moisture-contaminated fluid behaves worse under repeated braking or emergency stops, exactly when you need consistency most. That's not something you want to discover at speed. If you're aiming for 300,000 miles, this is one of those low-effort habits that quietly pays off. Fresh fluid protects calipers, preserves braking feel, and prevents corrosion from turning a simple system into an expensive headache later. And once brakes and suspension are under control, the final difference between average Teslas and truly long-lasting ones comes down to how owners respond to the first small warning signs, not the last. So when you step back and look at all five together, the reason some Teslas reach extreme mileage becomes obvious. When you line up Teslas that make it past 300,000 miles next to the ones that start feeling tired at 120,000 to 150,000, the difference isn't dramatic driving styles or rare components. It's consistency. The long-lasting cars are treated in a way that keeps heat, stress, and wear from stacking up over time. The owners who get there don't chase perfection. They avoid extremes. Charging stays conservative most days. Fast charging is used when it actually makes sense. Cold batteries aren't asked to perform at their limits. Suspension and tires aren't ignored just because the car feels smooth. Brake fluid isn't forgotten just because Regen does most of the work. What stands out most is how early small issues are handled. A slight change in steering feel gets checked instead of tolerated. Uneven tire wear gets corrected before it spreads stress into suspension joints. Charging behavior gets adjusted when range trends shift, not years later when degradation feels permanent. Nothing here is flashy, but it's effective. I've seen plenty of Teslas that could have gone much farther if owners hadn't assumed no oil changes meant no maintenance. Electric drivetrains are simpler, but they're not immune to physics. Heat still degrades components. Moisture still corrodes systems. Load still wears parts out. The Teslas that last don't feel special day to day. That's the point. They behave predictably at high mileage because they were treated predictably from the start. You don't notice the payoff early, you notice it when everything is still tight, quiet, and efficient. Years later, while others are pricing repairs they didn't see coming. If your goal is longevity instead of novelty, the habits in this breakdown matter more than software updates or performance tweaks. Keep stress low, keep maintenance boring, and let time do the rest. So, if you own a Tesla, don't wait on this. Subscribe now, drop a comment with your Tesla model, and follow these steps to make your car last over 300,000 miles, and I'll see you in the next one.